For those who are unaware, in November of 2025, at the PMI Global Conference, PMI dropped the 8th edition, and they did something in it that I've been waiting for since I started teaching risk management. They gave risk management its own explicit performance domain. They're not calling it uncertainty. It's not hidden in some knowledge area. Risk with a capital R comes with specific processes and now has domain level of authority equal to scope, schedule, and now what they call finance. If you're a project manager, this is going to change a lot of things around risk. And if you're a PMI-RMP, you're already certified, or if you're pursuing it, this validates everything you've been saying. For those new here, I'm Russ Parker, retired U.S. Marine Corps officer, turned project manager, now a PMI-RMP, teaching, coaching, and mentoring new and aspiring project managers and project risk managers. And today, I'm breaking down exactly what's changed in PMBOK 8, why it matters, and why this is the best thing PMI has done for risk management in decades. So let's dive into it. Before we jump into the major changes, you need to understand the evolution around the PMBOK, because the 8th edition didn't really come out of nowhere. It's PMI's response to what happened in PMBOK 7th edition. So the PMBOK 6th edition had 49 processes. And at the very end of the day, it was traditional. If you learned from that edition of the PMBOK, you knew exactly what to do based off all those different processes. But it felt rigid for agile teams. When PMBOK 7 came out, what most people have said, PMI overcorrected. They removed all those processes, and then they went over to principles and performance domains. It was a noble idea, but practitioners overall were confused. They didn't see the structure. How do I actually do project management according to the PMBOK? And the PMBOK 6th edition still was floating out there. Now with the PMBOK 8th edition, PMI has listened. They brought together the largest contribution pool of project managers to date and collected 48,000 data points from project managers worldwide. And they had 2 rounds of global feedback. And in turn, they found the balance. So now we're at 6 principles instead of 12, 7 performance domains instead of 8. And here's the key. They brought back 40 processes, but made them flexible enough to work with any approach. So the biggest change here, the one that matters most if you're like me and love to manage risk, they took what the PMBOK 7th edition called uncertainty and explicitly made it the risk performance domain. Risk is uncertainty. Not going to deny that, but let's call it what it is. Threats and opportunities, or as project managers call it, risk. So let me show you why this is such a huge change for us in the field. First up, PMI simplified the principles from 12 down to 6. PMBOK 7 had 12 principles. They overlapped. They were hard to remember. I'd ask PMP candidates to name them, and they'd struggle. The PMBOK 8th edition has 6. Number 1, adopt a holistic view. Number 2, focus on value. Number 3, embed quality into processes and deliverables. Number 4, be an accountable leader. Number 5, integrate sustainability within all project areas. And number 6, build an empowered culture. 6 areas you can remember these 6. And in 2 of these matter a lot to risk management. Adopt a holistic view. This means that you can't just look at schedule risk or cost risk. You have to think enterprise-wide. How does the project risk affect the portfolio, the organization, the stakeholders? How do you adopt this holistically across your project, program, and portfolio? And here's a new one, integrate sustainability. Here we're seeing those environmental, social, and governance risks. ESG, as it's been called, ESG risks are now explicitly part of that framework. And if you're not thinking about environmental impact, social responsibility, governance compliance, you're missing risks at the end of the day. Which gives us into the next change. The process groups, they're back. Well, sort of. They're called focus areas now. Initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, controlling, and closing. We all know these. But they were taken out of the PMBOK 7th edition. They all look familiar, I'm sure. These are the process groups that we have used since PMBOK 6th, but the PMBOK 8th edition is bringing them back, but they're not being so prescriptive around them anymore. They're not rigid phase gates that you have to move through. They're areas of focus that apply whether you're doing a waterfall, agile, or hybrid project. So, military background, let me give you a military analogy. In the Marine Corps, we had standard operating procedures, SOPs. In garrison, on base, we followed them religiously. But in the field or in combat, we had to adapt those SOPs to the situations we were in. So the PMBOK 7th edition was like going to the field with no SOPs. It was chaos, which is why the 6th edition still floated around out there. But the PMBOK 8th edition is giving the SOPs and saying, adapt them to your situation. So for risk managers, this is huge because now you can map your risk activities to these focus areas. Risk identification, initiation. Risk analysis, you're jumping into planning. Risk response execution, you're executing. Risk monitoring and controlling. And then closing out your risks. You're doing that in closing. The structure is back in the PMBOK. Although it never really left in the standard for risk management, it is back and it is something we can focus on as project managers and project risk managers. And then last, my favorite part, risk performance domain. Risk management is now explicitly one of the 7 core performance domains. And this was an evolution from overall. Again, in the 6th edition of the PMBOK, risk was a knowledge area, one of the 10 knowledge areas out there. It felt like, oh yeah, you also need to think about risk. PMBOK 7, they just named it uncertainty. Again, risk is uncertainty, but no one talks like that in real projects. Hey team, let's do some uncertainty management today. No, we manage risk, threats, opportunities. That's the language practitioners use. So it's now called the risk performance domain, not uncertainty. And it's domain 7 of 7 core domains. And those 7 domains, if you don't know, are governance, scope, schedule, finance, stakeholders, resources, and risk. And this gives risk the same level of authority as the finance domain, as schedule domain. Risk management is not optional. It's not a nice to have. It's a core function of what you have to do to manage a project. Now, here's why this matters to you. If you're a PMI-RMP already, or if you're pursuing it, PMI just validated your expertise at the highest possible level. You don't have to specialize in a supplementary skill. You are specializing in a performance domain that is one of 7 fundamental areas of project management. And if you're a PMP or just practicing project management, you can't skip risk anymore. You wouldn't skip scope management. You wouldn't skip schedule management. So you can't skip risk management either. It's one of the 7 core domains of running a project. And if you're trying to build a risk management capability in your organization, you now have PMI's backing. So at the end of the day, what does this mean for you? Well, if you're studying for the PMP, understand that the exam will eventually update the PMBOK 8th edition in July of 2025. Even if it hasn't yet, knowing that risk is a performance domain helps you see a bigger picture around it. It's not just about memorizing a process. It's about understanding that risk is fundamental to project success. And if you're pursuing the PMI-RMP, this is your moment. Risk management just got elevated to the core domain status. One of those 7 processes I just showed you. Those are the same processes that you're going to be tested on for the PMI-RMP. PMBOK 8th edition just made risk management more accessible and more respected. So if you're a practicing project manager, here's what you need to do. First, map out your current risk processes to the 7 PMBOK processes. Where do you have gaps? Then start using the domain level language. Don't say, I do risk management. Say, I'm responsible for risk performance domain on this project. That is how you make sure that people are using risk and taking it serious in the projects. And if you're in leadership, like a PMO director or portfolio manager, recognize that risk management now has the same standing as financial scope and schedule management. Fund it accordingly. Staff it accordingly. Respect it accordingly. This isn't just terminology change from uncertainty to risk. This is PMI saying risk management is core, not supplementary. If you're studying for the PMP exam, check out my PMP exam prep courses. Starting in April of 2026, we're going to be teaching the new PMI material around the PMBOK 8th edition, all preparing for the July 2026 cut over to the new exam. And if you're ready to level up to become the PMI-RMP, the true risk expert in your organization, I've got exam prep courses for you as well throughout 2026. You can check out the links in the description, or I will pin a comment to the top of the comment box for more information on those exam prep courses. And make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell for future updates. PMI is making a lot of updates right now. You need to be ready, and I will be a voice to let you know of what's going on. And check out this video series here where I'm talking about the PMI-RMP exam content outline, starting with, is the PMI-RMP actually worth it? And I think this video kind of gives a hint. I'm Russ Parker, the Bearded PM, out.